Yo, what up guys, Captain Blam here. So, I just wanted to go over some, I guess, builds that I've kind of sort of tested on PTS for the new DK rework in the next patch coming up. So, let's take a look at this first one. So, pretty standard. It's actually kind of an old build, but like not really, because the old build used Daedric Trickery, not Rally Cry. You can still use Trickery here, to be honest, but I think Trickery in today's meta, with all of the buffs we have now with subclassing and scribing and stuff, I don't think Trickery is like the most prevalent now. Also, the new mythics, like we have major protection on Monomyth. Like, major protection on your Trickery isn't that great. You don't really need major expedition off your Trickery anymore. So, just Rally Cry. So, first of all, let me just fix this. Don't really need all that health. You could dump this into stamina, or you could dump it into mag and stam. Use a healthy amount of both stats on DK, especially in the new patch, so. I want to get this to a nice little number, 24,000 stam. There we go. Buffs up the tooltips a little bit. You can do the opposite thing for this with your mag, but I like having a little more stam because you use your stam for your breach and you also use stam for blocking eye block a lot, so I like to do that. So Shadow, Khajiit. You could play Nord for more resistances and more ulti gen. You can play Dark Elf for the fire resistance, which will be good against all the other DKs. You also get some damage. But I found that most of the times when I was killing people on PTS was through crit whips. So I think Khajiit would be a very strong contender. And you can see, Khajiit, Shadow, Monomyth. You're scaling up your crit damage like that, and I put Minor Force on the build because DK's actually getting a 10% critical damage modifier. It's not on PTS yet. Or it is on PTS, I think, but it's not on build editor. But yeah, DK's getting a crit damage modifier, so I put Minor Force there to sort of represent that, to scale up the crit damage a bit. So, Burning Spellweave, Nerdhone, Sharp, Protective, Infused, Blood Spawn, Heavy Reinforced, Heavy Reinforced, Heavy Reinforced. And why all this heavy reinforce is necessary on these three pieces is because everything else is light. You don't really need to run reinforced on these light pieces right here, like the boots and the legs. I just like it because I like to see armor go up, make me happy. But you can just as easily just make these in pin. You're not really losing anything, so honestly just make them in pin. Let's see how much resistance we're losing on the physical side. Literally not even 1%, yeah. This 2 in pin. Or you can do well fitted. Or you can do divines. Honestly, divines would be pretty sick. At least to get the crit damage up to 125. How much divines does that take? 1, 2. So yeah, you can run 2 divines here. Because off the in-pin, what you're getting 1, 2, 3, 4% more crit resistance, which is pretty good. Pretty good. Or you can just do divines and get a little more crit damage. It's up to you. But yeah, all these are weapon damage, defending. So, Fleet Step Wings. This is the new Wings rework. This will give you major expedition for 4 seconds, and it has a knockback component to it, and it reduces projectile damage by 50%. Very good ability. This will be your stun, it'll be your movement, and it'll give you some mitigation. Very, very strong. However, there is the caveat that this isn't very good against players who block a lot, because the stun from this is blockable. So when I was dueling my friend Pig on PTS, he block casted everything because he was dead otherwise against the new DK because it's so strong, but that meant I couldn't stun him. So what you can do is you could put wings right here and you could put fossilize here if it becomes an issue. But this ability right here, Firekeeper, which is new Cinderstorm, it gives you minor heroism. So And it gives you a bunch of healing. It's very, very strong. Incinerate. This is the new Flames of Oblivion. It does like a big AoE like pulse around your character. It's kind of like the Destro skill, Impulse or something. Yeah, Impulse. It basically works like Impulse except on a timer. It no longer shoots the fireballs. And honestly, it does way more damage now. It is insanely powerful, especially with Soul of Flame, which this is basically your burst and your dark deal. So basically, what you want to do is hit a Incinerate, then hit a Soul of Flame, hit like a couple Dragon Fires, and then as this timer goes down and this timer goes down, you can hit a Whip. Or you can hit a Stun, then a Whip, and it'll all like land at once for some pretty huge burst. New Igneous Weapons is also very strong. It's an extra dot, and it's actually a very powerful dot too. It's basically free pyrebrand. It's pretty strong. New Coag. This gives you minor courage now. So, and it's a group heal. It heals around your character. It's kinda crazy. Corrosive Armor. You don't really need this. I mean, I guess they're buffing it again because they did nerf it on PTS a little bit ago, and now they're buffing it again where the dot works on players, so we will see if it's good. It's a big if and a big maybe. So that remains to be seen. Going into our champion points, Fighting Finesse, more crit damage, Master at Arms, Ironclad, Untamed Aggression. You can change Untamed Aggression for something else. Survival Instincts, Pain's Refuge, Fortified, Sustained by Suffering. You can change Survival Instincts or Fortified for something else like Celerity if you want to. So yeah, that's the first build. Second build is Kinmarchers relequen. And what I did with this build is I enabled Major Vuln in the buffs because that's the major selling point of Kinmarchers, but you also reduce people's damage, so that's pretty cool. And also enabled Major Berserk to simulate the buff from Take Flight, because this doesn't have its own buff on build editor yet to simulate its damage. So just keep that in mind. But the tooltips on this build are actually bigger than the Burning Spellweave build, whenever you take into account Major Vulnerability. Also, this whip damage is not correct. Like, it's not like properly stacking the damage, and it's also old whip. It's not the new whip. Like, let's say if I take away these stacks of Molten Whip, it's still the same. So keep in mind that this damage here is basically increased by 99% on the whip from the 13k, so it's actually more like 23k damage. Plus, the new version of whip doesn't give you weapon damage anymore. It increases your damage against players by, I think, 2% per stack. So it's like 6% more damage that you deal with the new whip. I don't know if it's going to be more damage than 300 weapon damage or not. That remains to be seen because we don't have it on build editor. But this build is heavy reinforced, heavy reinforced, heavy reinforced, all the Kinmarchers pieces in the big slots. And then we got trainee right here. You could do druid right here as well. Relequen belt, medium impen, protective, infused, protective. And then we're doing crit chance, so we can actually crit with this monomyth crit scaling. So we got 110% crit damage on this build. It's not as much as the previous build, but it's decent because we're missing the Shadow Mundus. But if we put Shadow on this build, then our crit chance is super low. But another thing you can do in this build is replace monomyth with Markin and just scale up your weapon damage, and then replace this crit chance with penetration Mundus. That's another thing you could do with this build. And then you would take off Fighting Finesse, and then you just put anything else, more damage or more defense. Like, something you could do is, if you're running the non-crit version of this, is take off Fighting Finesse, and then you just put on Resilience and have Giga crit resistance, which would be super strong. Next build. This is just like the dot build, but this is like the open world version of the dot build, where you're not like running Vateshran Ice and shit like that, but you can actually run Vateshran Ice open world now and have speed with the new wings. But this build isn't really taking advantage of that. what we're doing here is protect the brood. You get minor protection, which is, it's just going to make you tankier. And if you're in a group, it makes your group mates more tanky against projectiles. Yeah, pretty cool. And then fossilize just to guarantee a lot of those hits, those big hits that you're going to need. Because your whip will annihilate people, especially with all these dots sticking on them at the same time. And you got to keep in mind, igneous weapons is like a second pyrebrand. So how you play this build is you just load them up with the dots, stack your whip, fossilize, medium weave into a whip. And also, this scales up your damage by 10% as well. I think I might have... Let's see, yeah, I gotta take off the major vuln on this one. Because it was a carryover from the previous builds. Take off major vuln. And now the damage should be more accurate to what it should be. So this build is heavy reinforced, heavy reinforced, heavy reinforced. It's a lot of heavy reinforced because we're putting all triple infused and then we're doing lady. Just scaling up those resistances like crazy. And you see we got crazy crit resist too, so you got all your dots and your procs ticking on people and you should be pretty tanky as well, and you got crazy weapon damage at the same time. But also keep in mind, with a grain of salt, a lot of these stats are not correct. These are not going to be correct because it's like PTS jargon. So it's actually going to be lower than this, I believe, especially on the recoveries. But recovery isn't the biggest deal with new DK because of Mountain Giant. You can heavy attack someone, set them off balance, heavy attack them again, you got all your resources back. And you get extra stamina on your heavy attacks. So if you're heavy attacking with your ice staff, you get mag and stand back. It's crazy. Champion points, resilience, master of dimes, ironclad, untamed aggression. Champion points here I think were same as the first, fighting for nest, master of dimes, ironclad, untamed aggression on the Kinmarchers build. And then the final build, this is like the Proc tard kind of build. You can replace this with Malakath, or you can do Markin, be tankier. So, Deadly Strikes, or you can do Draugurkin here, but I didn't really want Draugurkin because it reduces your healing and stuff. But yeah, you can do Draugurkin here. You can also do Dragon's Appetite and just take off breath entirely. However, whenever I was testing Engulfing Dragonfire with this build, it was actually kind of insane. It was pretty insane. It was doing like 4 to 5k damage per tick, and it does 2 ticks within 1 second. So per second, it was doing like 10,000 damage on players. It was kind of nuts. It's risky though because you can't block while using this, but it's pretty easy to block cancel. So it's basically like jabs, I guess, except it lasts longer, so you gotta remember to block cancel it if you need to block damage and heal. But yeah, your wings, this will be your stun and your movement, so you can actually run this open world and just have full dot pressure. And then the Valken Sawyer's extra penetration. 1 protective, lady. Reading resilience, master, ironclad, untamed. Survival instincts, pain refuge, fortified, sustained by suffering. So yeah, these are like the new builds that I'm going for next patch on DK. I've pretty much tested them all in PTS. I've tested so many builds. The original build I was going to go with, which was 2H with Onslaught, that's dead now because they nerfed Onslaught for PvP on PTS. You don't get the 100% crit chance anymore. It used to be like a one-shot build because you would Onslaught whip on your deep breath and it was just killing people just instantly. It was insane. But yeah, that's kind of dead unless they decide to buff it again. And I'll make a video if they do buff it again for like an updated build. But yeah, these are the builds for next patch on DK. And hopefully I gone over like some of the changes as well. Like some of them aren't like super noteworthy to go over, except for like Soul of Flame change, Firekeeper, Incinerate, Coag, Fleet Step Wings. Like a lot of these things do have new effects, which are pretty cool. Oh yeah, Fossilize is also like a 2-second delay or something. but I actually like it for like Soul of Flame builds with Pyrebrand as well. Like this build right here, you can actually take off Burning Embers and put Soul of Flame. And what you would do is you would hit Soul of Flame, you would hit a Disintegrating Fire Breath, and then you would hit a Fossilize into a fully charged heavy attack whip. Sometimes they could break free and roll it, but sometimes they don't. They just get straight up nuked. So that's like another potential thing you could do with this. Especially with the Marsalak, because your Pyrebrand Marsalak I'm pretty sure can proc at the same time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see, are there any other things I can go over? Passive-wise, Avalanche, you just get more damage as you do damage throughout a fight. Pretty crazy. I wish I could like scale that up on my toggled skills, but that's not here yet. But you actually be doing even more damage than what these tooltips say. But the tooltips are wrong anyways, so it's whatever. And I think Blessing at the Peak currently on PTS is an updated version of it. It's not just ulti-gen, it's actually crit damage as well. The Storm Voice, this just scales up your Battle Roar. This is new Battle Roar, it's on Draconic Power now. Draconic Power is no longer your tank line is Earthen Heart. Which is insane tank line, by the way. Because you get extra armor, you'll get Avalanche for more damage, you'll get ulti-gen, and you'll get crit damage. It's the only armor line with crit damage. And then you'll get the fully charged heavy setting off balance, which is also really good. So for subclassing, Earthen Heart's going to be insane too, and you get armor, stun, and your weapon damage buff all on the same line. The only other line that gives you your weapon damage buff on your armor buff with a stun is Stormcalling, but Stormcalling doesn't get crit damage. Well, Earthen Heart does. And you get Avalanche. Avalanche is comparable to Amplitude, except you will always keep Avalanche up. Pretty much. Not always. But with Avalanche, it's like... With Amplitude, it does less damage scaling the lower their HP gets, and you do more damage the fuller their health is. With how Amplitude works, well, Avalanche is just always active, but it can fall off. So it's like pretty much the same kind of comparable damage to Stormcalling. But I think it might be a little more damage than Stormcalling. And you get Corrosive. Pretty cool. Anyways, that's the new DK. Hopefully this wasn't too bad of a yap session.